So see, the emphasis of my session is going to be to just give you, because knowledge की जहाँ तक बात है, you have hundreds and hundreds of things which are available on the internet and there here and there. I'll just try and make a few topics a little easier for you in terms of that these are the key takeaway points for these particular topics, whether it is Startup India, Stand Up India, whether it is the devaluation of yuan or industrial index of production and all those things. ठीक है. So plus on top of that, I'll also try and tell you the kind of questions which you can expect out of those topics, whether it is in prelims, mains or even from the perspective of the interview, right? किस तरीके से current affairs के topic से question बनते हैं and how you can actually preempt those questions. So there is one thing as joining a test series, whichever test series you join, but at the end of the day, a test series might not be able to cover all the length and the breadth of all the current affairs topics, and therefore your preparation is something which comes in to fill that gap. And that gap filling has to be done by your own preparation. And when I mean that, what I mean is that you have to start thinking that what could be the potential question which could be asked out of this news piece, what could be the potential question which could be asked out of this editorial, how can this particular piece of information help me in writing my essay or help me in writing some answer to some other topic which might be remotely related to it, right? So I'll just try and give you a perspective on that. So starting from yuan devaluation, okay. So now this is just to tell you that how yuan has depreciated in a way. Depreciation would be a wrong word to use, but how yuan's value has devalued or how it has gone down in comparison to the American dollar in last few years, right? And especially in last few months. Now, can someone tell me what is the difference between depreciation and devaluation? One person, someone who could raise their hand and yeah. Could you please be a little louder? Okay, so she says that devaluation is done by the central bank of the country and depreciation is because of the market forces. Anyone who can give a better yes.
Sir, depreciation takes place in a floating exchange rate and devaluation takes place in a fixed exchange rate.
Okay, so devaluation takes place in a fixed exchange rate regime and depreciation takes place in a floating exchange rate regime. What is a pegged exchange rate regime? Pegged is fixed. Floating is equivalent to depreciation. Floating के अंदर ही depreciation होता है और depreciation can happen just because of the market forces. Is there a range which is given in the floating exchange rate regime? Is there a range? What is it called? Managed floating. What is the kind of system that we have in India? Managed floating. So that means that we have not left it completely to the market, and at the same time we have come a long way from the pre-1991 era where we used to have it controlled by the RBI, right? Okay. Now, ये कैसे खुल गया भाई? So devaluation of yuan has been happening, and if you actually read through the statistics which are there, it's given in your current affairs notes also, that yuan is hovering at a 4.5-year low, down over the 4% against the dollar since the beginning of the year 2015. So there has been a decline in the value of yuan by almost 4% beginning from 2015, right? So first we have to examine whenever any such statement comes in the newspaper. हो सकता है आपको करंट अफेयर्स नोट्स कल से ये मिलने बंद हो जाएं, राइट? सो देन हाउ आर यू गोइंग टू प्रिपेयर योरसेल्फ फॉर सच अ टॉपिक? द वे यू डू इट इज दैट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल थिंक दैट devaluation of yuan has happened, right? First of all, understand what you mean by devaluation. Then you must have heard of a remotely connected term called as depreciation also. What is the difference between devaluation and depreciation? Who controls this devaluation and depreciation? What is the kind of system that we have in India? What are the advantages of devaluation? What are the disadvantages of devaluation? What are the advantages of a managed exchange rate regime? What are the disadvantages of a managed exchange rate regime? So and so forth, right? try and list down these points, try and search on the internet or whichever basic books you have access to. This would cover up a major part of your preparation for something like prelims. प्रीलिम्स के अंदर इसी तरीके के बेसिक सवाल पूछे जाते हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा फंडू सवाल नहीं पूछे जाते. दे विल आस्क वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चंस. दे विल ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड दैट can you actually differentiate between depreciation and devaluation. The only difference which would be there between say a state exam and the UPSC would be that UPSC would ask that in a very conceptual and an unconnected way, which would appear to be a very difficult question. But if you would have understood the concept really well, it would not be really difficult to answer that question. ठीक है. स्टेट एग्जाम में क्या होगा कि डेप्रिसिएशन की डेफिनेशन दे देंगे, डिवैल्यूएशन की डेफिनेशन दे देंगे और कुछ बोल देंगे कि कौन सा डेप्रिसिएशन है, कौन सा डिवैल्यूएशन है, या डेप्रिसिएशन की डेफिनेशन क्या होती है. यूपीएससी के अंदर उसको थोड़ा सा तोड़ मरोड़ के देंगे, कुछ ऐसा देंगे कि डेप्रिसिएशन की डेफिनेशन दे देंगे और फिर बोलेंगे कि डेप्रिसिएशन कौन मैनेज करता है, डेप्रिसिएशन के इफेक्ट्स पूछ लेंगे, पॉजिटिव एडवांटेजेस या नेगेटिव्स करके कुछ पूछ लेंगे. उस तरीके से कुछ क्वेश्चन को मिक्स एंड मैच करके 2-3 कॉन्सेप्ट्स को एक ही क्वेश्चन में पूछा जाता है. दिस इज व्हाट यूपीएससी डज. राइट नाउ what are the areas to be covered in such a topic? First of all, do not be really bothered about the numbers that 4% depreciation हुआ है, 10% depreciation हुआ है. None of it is going to help you at all. Some people say that you should throw a lot of facts and figures into your answers in UPSC. That does not add a lot of value to your answer analytically. Right? So therefore, do not be so bothered about these numbers कि 4% हुआ है या 10% हुआ है. That's not going to add a lot of value. Plus on top of that, it's very difficult to remember these numbers. So try and remember the concept, try and remember the logic behind that particular phenomenon. Right? Now, first of all is what are the reasons for devaluation? What are the reasons for devaluation of yuan? One by one. Please put up your hands first and then answer. Yes.
Increasing the export.
So China wants to increase the exports. Why? Why does it want to increase its exports? Because their economy is in a slump. Is China's economy led by domestic demand or by external demand? External demand, right? And what about India's economy? Internal demand, domestic demand, right? Now, because there has been a decline overall across the globe in the demand for a lot of commodities and the products, China has also been facing the hit, and therefore its exports have been suffering, right? And the overall production of the economy has gone down. There are a number of other reasons also. Economic students would know that better. There are increasing labor costs and so on and so forth, and so many other things are also happening in China. But one of the major reasons is that post 2008, even though people say that the global economy has recovered, it still hasn't recovered fully, and perhaps we are facing another recession, right? We are the danger of another recession looms large. I'll come to that a little later. You people would have already heard about how commodity prices have gone down significantly. Crude oil prices have gone to an all-time low. The per barrel value of crude oil is, right? So it has gone down to, I mean, $30 के अंदर you can be getting a barrel of fuel. That's how it has, that how low the value of fuel has gone down to. And in a way, it is expected that the entire global economy is again going into a period of slump. Recession or not, no one knows, but slump, yes, and perhaps it might translate into recession also in coming time. Right? Now, therefore, China, which is majorly led by external demand, and since the external demand has gone down, it does not have a lot of domestic consumption as when compared to a country like India. Therefore, as when compared to a country like India, and therefore China has been trying to devalue its currency, that is yuan, right? That is one of the reasons. What else could be the reason for devaluation of yuan? Yes. Move towards making it a global currency. Okay, fair enough. What else? Okay, so there is an increasing competition from Southeast Asian countries in terms of its exports, and therefore China wants to make its exports more competitive. First of all, tell me one thing. अगर currency devalue होती है या currency depreciate होती है, let's say Indian dollar at Indian rupee at this point of time is 68 rupees for a dollar. It becomes 75. Would our exports be more expensive or cheaper? And what about our imports? They would be more expensive, right? And therefore there would be a sudden drop in the demand for the imports also. But at the same time, there is another side to it. Even though there might be a dip in the demand of imports or imported products or imported goods, but it might increase our current account deficit. How? Because our imports are going to increase more in value. Even though, again, the caveat to this is that this might also lead to an increase in exports, because your exports are going to become more competitive, and therefore this is going to balance the current account deficit. But if you put it in case of a country like India, our economy already has a huge current account deficit on account of a large imports when compared to the exports, right? And therefore a country like India increase or decrease in the value of rupee with vis-a-vis US dollar or some other global currency would mean that our current account deficit would increase, because our imports bill would increase. And even though our exports might get some competitive advantage, but as of now India's economy is not able to compete at the global level with a lot of other countries, even if we provide them this impetus in form of devalued currency. Okay? This is one thing which should be known to you. Now, apart from that, what could be the impact? Okay, what else could be the reason for devaluation of yuan? What else is a major reason for devaluation of yuan? It's given in your notes only. What do you mean by surplus production? Okay, so surplus capacity, what does that mean?
The prices of the goods have already come down because of this slump in crude oil prices. The transportation costs have decreased. So eventually they have to flush it out into some other market.
Okay, exactly. So I mean, basically you have already a huge lot of supply which is waiting. Your demands have gone down, and therefore you have to flush it out, as he says. And perhaps as in case of China, you do not have domestic market. The domestic market is not as developed as, say, a country like India, and therefore you have to export out these goods, right? And exporting out these goods means that in order to make them more competitive, you again devalue your currency, right? So these are some of the reasons which are there for the devaluation of yuan, right? Then let's move on to the next aspect of it. What would be, so कोई भी ऐसा कोई issue आए, सबसे पहले तो try and understand why is this happening, what is happening, what part is that there is a devaluation which is happening. Numbers, do not worry about it. Why is it happening has been covered. Now, how is it going to impact? So how is it going to impact China? How is it going to impact India? Always कोई भी problem हो, international, global कोई भी problem हो, whether it is the rise of ISIS, whether it is devaluation of the Chinese currency, whether there is some demand for statehood which is taking place in the Ireland or vote is taking place there, whether it is the abolition of the upper house of Italy, all of it would have some repercussions for India also, or possible repercussions for India. So therefore any global news, वो जो international वाला segment होता है आपके हिंदू newspaper में, do not just treat it stand alone as a piece of information, but try and see what could be the implications of this news, this event, this happening on India. You may or may not get a lot of fodder points in the following days in newspaper articles. It may or may not happen, because at times newspapers are too preoccupied with a lot of some one particular issue which is happening in some part of the country. Some Jat protest would be happening, they'll be more bothered about it. Some JNU protests are happening, they'll be more bothered about it than the rest of the country. So what I'm just trying to say is that you would have to put in your thought as well, and it's not that difficult. You might say, you might think that I am bluffing अगर मैं इसके बारे में सोच रहा हूँ या सोच रही हूँ. That's not the case. Think about it, discuss with your faculty, discuss amongst your peers, discuss with your seniors, and try and search up on the internet. Say ISIS, the rise of ISIS is happening, or the rise of Boko Haram is happening in Nigeria. What could be its possible impact on India? You might not find an article on that, but you could just think what could be the basic impact or basic consequences of the rise of a terrorist organization somewhere in some part of the world, right? What could be its implications for India? What could be the security implications which you will have? try and think like that when current affairs preparation की जब preparation कर रहे हो तो, because that is what is going to help you. Because why I say that is because vision के current affairs material और 10 कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट के करंट अफेयर मटेरियल और बहुत सारी चीज़ें सबके पास अवेलेबल है, राइट. It that is not going to make a difference in your preparation. I am not talking about writing your answer here, but I am saying just your preparation. Your preparation, there are, I remember that Mr. O.P. Chaudhary, who's district magistrate in Chhattisgarh, he had come here once and someone asked him that what is the best way to become an IAS officer or to crack this exam, and he said that every year 180 people get through this exam or become IAS officers, and there are 180 different ways, 180 different stories, but you would have to decide what is your view and what is your viewpoint and what is your story, and that has to only come from you. No one else is going to give it to you, no other coaching institute material. This is not, the exam is no longer about cramming a lot of stuff and just vomiting it in there. That is not how it is happening now. You have to develop your own analysis on top of what you are already getting in the newspapers and current affairs material and this and that and so many other places, right? एंड धीरे धीरे एबिलिटी डेवलप हो जाएगी. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि मतलब नहीं कर सकते. सिंपल सोचना शुरू करो, बहुत सिंपल सोचो. बोको हराम का अगर राइज अगर नाइजीरिया में होगा तो क्या इम्पैक्ट हो सकता है सिक्योरिटी इंप्लीकेशन पे? बहुत सिंपल है, 3-4 पॉइंट सोच सकते हो. जो आईसिस का होगा वही बोको हराम का होगा, बट हो सकता है शायद एक आधा कुछ और. नाइजीरिया और इंडिया के रिलेशंस में क्या फ़र्क पड़ सकता है? नाइजीरिया और इंडिया के ट्रेड, हमारा कोई ट्रेड इन्वेस्टमेंट है क्या नाइजीरिया के अंदर, क्या उसके ऊपर फ़र्क पड़ सकता है? सो ट्राई एंड थिंक लाइक दैट and you will be able to get a lot of points. And once you are into this habit, believe me, you will not find it difficult to find answers to questions in the exam hall. The reason for that is because it's very difficult to anticipate कि यही सारे question जो मैं करके जा रहा हूँ वो सब आ जाएगा. They will still ask 10 questions which you would have never even thought of could be asked in the examination. One typical example which I gave is the 2013 question on the Olympics medals, right? The question was that should the Olympic medal winners and medal winners be given rewards and awards and cash doles and this and that, or should the state be more focused on developing the grassroots facilities? Now this kind of a question you cannot prepare as such, but वहीं पे ही सोचना होगा, and that you have to develop as a habit and as a practice, right? Okay. What else? What could be the impact of this on China?
Inflation.
Inflation. How? The demand would be lesser than the supply. How?
Demand's outside, demand's not domestic.
Supply would be more because the goods are produced more.
तो इन्फ्लेशन कैसे होगा?
Anticipating that the exports would.
Okay, what else? और क्या होगा? This is हाँ? Short term क्या होगा? Okay, what else? Okay, reduction in forest reserves. Yes. What else? Huh? Decrease? Sorry? Decrease in FDI. Okay, what else?
Ranking that S&P and all these countries where it would be coming on to the lower scale.
Okay, yeah, that could be one of the possible implications which could happen because there would be decrease in the FDI and your overall economy would be this thing. What else? Increased unemployment or employment?
Due to more exports with more manufacturing.
Okay. So in a way, this would give a boost to the domestic industries, right? Because your imports would decrease, your exports would increase, and at the same time, but again, I mean, this is for a country like China, but if you put it in perspective of India, you cannot predict exactly what might happen, right? What else? Okay, so the economy might just go out of control. Okay, so this is also one of the reasons which is put there. So your model current affairs also say that exports can become cheaper and therefore more attractive to the foreign buyers, would promote the local industry and the domestic industries vis-a-vis these things. Plus, what it could also be doing is that there could be a further downward curve on the commodity prices, therefore crashing them even more. Right. So these are some of the implications which would be on China. What would be the implications on Indian economy? So India is
India exports raw material to China for
Huh.
manufacturing. So Indian exports may increase. Indian export may increase to China.
Indian exports will increase. Indian exports might actually take a hit. If we are exporting raw material to China, our exports will take a hit because imports in China would be more costlier.
They will require that raw material for manufacturing.
They will require that raw material, but see, they are already having surplus production. So our exports might actually suffer. What you're saying might be true, but if you look at it in a very theoretical manner, it's going. Our exports are going to take a hit because, as far as China is concerned, one is that. Second, our exports are also going to take a hit because our export would have to become as competitive as China's exports, right? What else? यार थोड़ा सा कम कर दो इसका वॉल्यूम. हाँ? Our imports will increase from China. What else? So therefore, it might just affect the India's domestic industries, right? Indian market could become susceptible and could be captured by the Chinese products. Yes. Our goods would become again uncompetitive in the world market as compared to China. What else? Balance of trade problem with China could be accentuated. What else? The current account deficit will increase because China is one of our largest trading partners. What else? Okay, so this could also have implications for Indian employment scenario because our domestic industries might get a hit, and because of that, eventually unemployment might increase in the economy, right? What else?
Make in India will fail.
don't pass such एकदम इतनी judgmental statements मत pass करो. But yeah, I mean, make in India might suffer, might fail and might suffer, है ना? थोड़ा सा फर्क है. So yeah, what would be the impact on world economy? You have some point to make. Okay, so because China is devaluing its currency, Indian RBI, or basically the Reserve Bank of India or the Indian Federal Bank, would also be forced to devalue its currency in order to sustain our economy, right? And therefore that would again have more implications. Sorry? You do it because our exports would suffer, our current account deficit is going to suffer, and eventually in order to sustain ourselves in the global economy, we would have to devalue our currency. That is, so again, I'll come to that. So that is just one of the implications, that Reserve Bank might be forced to do that, and to a large extent, the depreciation of Indian currency, which has been happening in the recent past, which has been attributed a lot to this Sarkar and this and that and all that thing.
We don't have export capacity. We can put duties on their imports.
Okay, so yes, okay, yeah. So putting duties on imports from China obviously is something which could be done in the short term. And I mean, I'm not talking about that. We'll talk about what could be the solutions and the way forward. Yes.
Will it have on OBOR and
What?
One Belt, One Road initiative?
Okay, so what impact it could have on the One Belt, One Road initiative would be that One Belt, One Road initiative is going to is going to suffer because of that, right? Because China already is facing this slump and this and that, and plus on top of that, it would be, so see, they are not funding the entire, they are also dependent on getting money from elsewhere, right? And here their entire economy would be in trouble. Therefore, One Belt, One Road initiative would also, and the entire strategic part of this is also going to suffer, right? What else?
In long run, it will be favorable for India because it will improve in SDR. Chinese currency will be market determined, but Indian currency could be regulated by RBI.
Okay, and
So it may be favorable in long run for India.
how? I didn't get it. Sorry.
If Chinese currency will be market determined, Chinese Federal Bank won't have control over their
Chinese currency will not be market determined, na?
in long run.
How? How will it become market determined? Okay, if it trades in SDR, okay. Right, huh? Okay, that is a different angle and a dimension to it. What he's saying is that if yuan is placed and is made a part of the SDR basket, then it would be the exchange rate would be market determined, and in a way India would have the advantage maybe at some point of time later. I mean, okay, that is a completely different topic. Let's not digress into that. What else? What else could be the impact on global economy पे क्या impact हो सकता है इसका? It can distort the entire global market, right? US is worried, a lot of other countries are worried, especially developed countries like Germany, etc. are very worried. Why are they so worried? What else? Why are developed countries like Germany? Okay, so yes, what else? Okay, so dumping of products from China might happen and again destroy the industries elsewhere. What else?
They have given huge loans to China for One Belt, One Road.
Okay, so they have given huge loans to China for One Belt, One Road initiative, and therefore those recovery of those loans might be in trouble. Yes, what else? Exactly. China has also become a huge market for these developed economies, such as Germany or US or whichever, right? And their products are actually going to suffer because imports in China are going to become expensive, and as you would know, as per the elasticity of demand, right? Some of the products, the demand would actually go down. Some of the products, the demand might just go up as the price would increase. But for large number of products, the demand might just go down, right? What else? Yes, so there would be currency wars. Have you heard of currency wars? What are currency wars?
Competitive devaluation.
One person.
Competitive devaluation.
Competitive devaluation. When did this happen last?
1973.
1973, 1997, Asian financial crisis. Yes. So East Asian financial crisis. So currency wars. Again, this could be just one of the topics which could come out of this. But UPSC might just ask, what do you mean by currency wars? Should India indulge itself in currency wars? Another question which could come out of this is that should India also adopt the rupee devaluation on the lines of China in order to become more competitive? What could be the pros and cons of such a move? Examine, whatever, right? This could be one of the possible questions. Another possible question could be, okay, wait. Then solutions. What are the solutions in the short and the long term, right? So always try and see. जब भी solutions किसी भी answer में लिखो UPSC में, try and think short term and long term and structure it that way. It will always give a better flavor to your answer and also gives more depth and perspective, right? What could be the measures which could be taken by the countries in the short term in order to deal with this crisis? Imposing import duties or some sort of anti-dumping duty, right? What else? Some countries might just go for devaluing their own currency. Again, that has its own repercussions, but that could also be one of the ways, right?
Currency devaluation is not same as dumping.
Sorry?
Currency devaluation is not same as dumping. So you can't put anti-dumping duty.
You can put, so you could put a dumping duty, okay, so you can't put an anti-dumping duty, but you could be putting some sort of duties on exports coming in from some particular economy, imports coming in from some particular economy just because you feel that they are anti-competitive in nature, right? Again, that might lead to a long tussle at WTO or somewhere else, but we're just talking of possible solutions here. What else?
Providing incentives or tax benefits to domestic industry.
Okay, providing incentives or benefits to domestic industries. Again, this might be a retrograde step for a lot of economies and for countries, but this could also be possibly one of the ways to deal with this crisis. What else? Tax reforms, right? Something like a GST. In order to make your economy more competitive, your exports more competitive, tax reforms like GST could be introduced. You could have single markets, right? Improving your own production efficiency, improving the efficiency of your output of your economy, investing more in capital so as to, and investing more in the newest technologies and innovating so as to be able to compete with exports from other countries in terms of value and quality and not just in the terms of volume, right? What else? Sorry? Reduction of export duty could also be there, but again that might just lead to WTO tussle, but yes, that is also one of the possible solutions. What else? Labor reforms, yes, again labor reforms, improving the infrastructure within your economy. So these are, so labor reforms could be perhaps a short-term solution. Improving the infrastructure and innovation and introducing new capital and capital infusion, etc., could be the solution in the long term, right? What else? Is there anything else? Trying to promote investment, right? Initiatives like Startup India. So again, try and think कि और कौन सी government की schemes हैं, उनको यहाँ पे relate करो, right? Think of scheme like Startup India, Stand Up India. Say that Startup India is going to promote again more entrepreneurship within the country, therefore promote jobs and more innovation and all those kind of things, and therefore be able to improve the productivity of the economy, right? So these are some of the dimensions which you should be looking at. Now, what are the other addendum areas along with this? As I said earlier also, how are currencies valued? Who determines currency exchange rate in different countries, right? Devaluation versus depreciation, and what is the Indian system of determining exchange rate? What are the positives of it? What are the negatives of it? What has been the evaluation? Now, this might just sound like कि यार इसी एक topic के ऊपर इतना time लग गया, but once you cover a topic like this, spending say an hour, right? This is not going to take more than an hour to prepare a topic like this in this depth. Once you have done it, once you have made very short notes, very crisp notes, they are going to stay with you for your life, because you would have done that research on your own. You would have got those points. I am not saying that you necessarily need to search up Google for each and everything, or you need to go to library to to go through books. You could use these notes. You could use notes from other institutes, books, this, that, whatever, your class notes, combine all of them, put them in a place, and your exchange rate and a foreign exchange rate and devaluation, depreciation, this, that, and all of these things would be covered. And therefore, you should not be bothered about it till the time you again revise at some point of time later, right? This is the way you would have to prepare each and every topic in current affairs, especially in topics, especially in areas such as economics, especially in areas such as security and polity and governance, because these are very conceptual and analytical areas, and here you will have to prepare yourself from all the ends, right? Cover yourself from all the ends. So what could be a possible question? A possible question could be that devaluation of yuan is a cause of concern for Indian as well as global economy. Analyze. Now this could be critically analyzed also, right? What steps should be initiated by the Indian government to overcome this problem? Another, I had already told you that one could be, so what steps should be initiated, or critically analyze the steps which have been taken by the Indian government to overcome this problem. How far can devaluing Indian rupee be a solution to this problem, right? So these could be some of the possible questions which are there. There could be hundreds of them. Just try and think like this, that what could be the possible questions and write answers to them. सिर्फ mere fact collection से कुछ नहीं होगा, knowledge सबके पास होती है. Try and write it in a perspective that okay, is a cause of concern for Indian as well as global economy. How? Why not? Why should it not bother India or global economy, or why should it bother? And then what steps should be initiated by the Indian government? What steps have been taken by the Indian government? Critically analyze those steps. Try and get as much analysis in your answer as possible. Because जब सिर्फ अगर facts लिखने होंगे तो facts सब लिख पाओगे. Analysis is what is going to determine whether you get 6.5 in a question or whether you get 4. And those 2.5 in each of those 20 questions is what is going to make a difference of say 30-40 marks finally in your score, right? Okay. Now moving on to the next topic, which is about corporate social responsibility. Now this issue was in news in 2013. 2013 UPSC asked a question related to corporate social responsibility and the Companies Act of 2013. It asked that what are the basic provisions of Companies Act 2013 and what are going to be the possible implications of introducing the mandatory CSR in the Companies Act of 2013, right? Now this it has come into news recently because there are a few reports and this and that and everything, analysis which has come in the newspapers in terms of what has been the impact of the CSR guidelines and the CSR provisions which have been made into the Companies Act of 2013. What is the most basic provision which is there?
2% of
2% of total
Average profit of last profit.
total profits of last 3 years, right? Again be very precise. देखो मेंस के अंदर ना थोड़ा बहुत ऊपर नीचे आपकी इंफॉर्मेशन हो तो चल जाता है. प्रीलिम्स के अंदर you need to be very precise, and especially given the kind of pattern which we have right now, where you have only GS marks which are determining whether you are getting through or not. That means that you have to be very, very specific in your information. So 2% of what and 2% of how many years ka profit, all of this information should be very clear, crystal clear in your mind, right? Keep it very, very clear. Now, okay, what are the areas to cover in this? Provisions, this was already asked in 2013, right? There are a number of guidelines also which have been released from time to time, and under the CSR guidelines of the Companies Act 2013. You need not be bothered about them. If you read any of the economic wala newspaper, Economic Times or Business Standard, etc., you will find swathes and swathes of article on this. Do not be bothered about it. Perhaps one of the questions which could be again asked, and which is a very basic question, is should we be having mandatory CSR or should it be voluntary in nature, right? So that is one area which you could explore, even though I do not think that UPSC would now go into that area, simply because we have mandatory CSR in this country now and does not really matter, right? Then what has been the impact? That is the most important part. What has been the impact of the CSR provision, the mandatory CSR provision in the Companies Act? Have the companies been spending more than what they have been asked to? What has there been a decrease in the CSR spending? Has there been an increase in the CSR spending? Are there any particular trends? Are any particular sectors spending more than the other sectors, right? Now, how could this kind of piece of information help you? Say for example, there is a question on Indian economies कंज्यूमर ऐसे आ जाता है ऐसा कुछ कि कंज्यूमर लेड और लार्ज मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज आर डिस्ट्रॉइंग इंडिया और समथिंग लाइक दैट, कुछ भी ऐसा एक टॉपिक आ जाता है. देयर यू कुड बी साइटिंग एग्जांपल्स that say companies those who are in this particular sector have spent even more than what was mandated for them to spend. They've already crossed their budget. So therefore it would be wrong to say that these companies are operating only just for the profit sake. There is a social angle also involved with a large number of companies. So this is one of the arguments which you could give. What I'm just trying to say is that information ko sirf information mat rakho. Try and use that information somewhere productively. And if UPSC खेल ही वो है, आपको जो सारा इंफॉर्मेशन आपके पास है उसको किस तरीके से एग्जाम में आप रेप्लिकेट कर पाते हो, कहाँ कहाँ पर, दैट इज वॉट इज गोइंग टू डिटरमिन वेदर यू बिकम सक्सेसफुल और नॉट. Otherwise, as I am repeating for the upteenth time, that everyone has basic knowledge. If you look at it, let's say last 3 years, okay, or let's say last 5 years, how many students would have appeared in mains? It would be close to say 40 to 50,000. I mean, 5 साल का ले लेते हैं, 5 साल के अंदर अगर 15,000 करोगे 75,000, इसमें बहुत सारे रिपीट होंगे. Close to 50,000 students would have appeared, and 90% of these students would be serious aspirants. That means close to 40-45,000 serious aspirants are giving this exam almost every year. कुछ लोग चले जाते हैं, हजार ही जाते हैं बस जिनका सिलेक्ट होते हैं, और everyone stays, right? और some people are जिनका हो जाता है फिर से वापस दे रहे हैं, whatever. So there are 40,000 students those who are appearing every year. That is where your competition is. I'm सिंपली टॉकिंग फ्रॉम दैट परस्पेक्टिव. प्रीलिम्स की मैं इसलिए बात नहीं कर रहा बिकॉज अगर प्रीलिम्स नहीं हो रहा तो फिर बहुत कहीं बेसिक इश्यूज हैं कॉन्सेप्ट के अंदर. पर 40,000 लोगों से कंपटीशन है, वो 40,000 लोगों में compete करके आगे निकलना है, तो वो सब इतना ही मान के चलो कि उन 40,000 में से 25 से 30,000 लोग का नॉलेज जो है वो ऑलमोस्ट सेम होगा. नॉलेज विल नॉट बी द डिसाइडिंग फैक्टर. It is the way you write your answer, the kind of perspective you give, the kind of analysis you write, kind of thinking you have, the way you have developed your opinions and views, right? Then look at the sector-wise trends. All of this has been given in your current affairs, so I am not going through it. This is very factual kind of thing, but I am just trying to tell you that how इस तरीके की factual piece of news या information या current affair item से भी आपको कुछ useful चीज़ें मिल सकती हैं. For example, the salient points of the impact of the CSR has been that CSR budgets have grown exponentially, and education and eradicating poverty have been the two most important themes of CSR. Again, you could just remember them. Education and poverty remain to be the most. So कहीं पे भी कोई ऐसा टॉपिक आता है पॉवर्टी के ऊपर, एजुकेशन के ऊपर आता है, एजुकेशन के ऊपर आपको ऐसे लिखने को आता है. So you could put in a perspective there which would definitely catch the eye of the examiner. If you say education, Indian education is in doldrums or something like that, ऐसे कुछ ऐसे आ जाता है, let's say, right? इसके अंदर if you write that there is no doubt that these are problems and this and that, but at the same time there is a silver lining also. The silver lining is government is trying to increase its budget on education, let's say, okay. Then another point is that there has been an increase in the CSR budgets of all the companies of the companies put together cumulatively in India, and education sector has been one of the most important or priority sectors of CSR spending. Therefore, not all is doomed for the Indian education sector. Private sector is now coming in order to spend through CSR mode. You get my point? You can use this very small piece of information somewhere very beautifully in somewhere in your essay or in your answer and could help you increase your marks. That gives a very different perspective to the examiner. Again, ये एक मैंने बता दिया, आप बोलोगे कि यार ये तो सब लिख देंगे. अब इसलिए मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि खुद से मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी. सारे पॉइंट मैं बता दूंगा फिर सभी वही लिख के आ जाएंगे, राइट? और सब नहीं लिख के आएंगे तो एटलीस्ट यहाँ पे 10% रिसेप्टिविटी होगी तो 10% लिख के आ जाएंगे इस क्लास के लोग, राइट? वॉट इज so that is there. Then the next highest recipient of CSR fund was environmental sustainability. Again, so just try and take out small points. ये पूरा आर्टिकल के अंदर वैसे भी इतना कोई बहुत ज़्यादा वो नहीं है इस करंट अफेयर्स आइटम में. You'll have to just get those 2-3 very important points, either mark them with a highlighter, just write them somewhere on the side of sidelines. यहाँ पे कहीं पे लिख लो, कहीं पे अपने notes में लिख लो, and that's it. 3-4 points from this article, that's it. और नहीं है ज़्यादा कुछ इसके अंदर. Similarly, now the question could be that even though, okay, so perhaps one of the questions which could be asked is that mandatory CSR post the Companies Act 2013 has been unable to achieve the desired success because of several lacunae in the legislation examined, right? What have been the challenges which have been there? अब ये क्वेश्चन एग्जामिन है, ये हो सकता है क्वेश्चन क्रिटिकली एनालाइज भी हो, राइट? क्रिटिकली एनालाइज में यू विल बी लुकिंग एट दिस स्टेटमेंट ऑल्सो वेरी क्रिटिकली, दैट इज दिस ट्रू और नॉट, that no, there is, if you look at the numbers, there has been an increase in the CSR budget, there has been an increase in the CSR spending, and therefore this is not right. You could prove it with certain facts, right? At the same time, you could be supporting this argument also. You could say that implementation mechanisms are very poor as far as CSR is concerned. As far as CSR is concerned, a large number of shell companies have come up, shell NGOs have come up in order to route CSR's funding, mandatory CSR funding into these shell NGOs, right? Then there is no proper way to assess the impact of CSR funding or CSR spending by the companies. What has been the impact? So one is that, okay, I have spent 200 crores out of my profits or 20 crores out of my last 3 years profit, that is 2% of my whatever full profits, and they have been spent on creating some 100 schools. But what has been the impact of creating those schools? Are those schools actually running? What is the outcome जिसको कहते हैं? One is output, that is how many schools have got created or how many students are coming out of the school. The outcome is that what is the actual learning level of the students, those who are coming out of those schools. Has there been a perceived difference in the learning and knowledge which is gained by these students because of these schools? Is there an improvement in that? Right? So that is one thing. Another thing is that the regulations which are there in the CSR Act and the guidelines of the Companies Act, and the Companies Act are very confusing, and therefore at times companies are not able to decide whether this particular activity falls into the ambit of CSR or not, right? So some people might call something as education, some people might not classify it as education, right? I might be going and telling people about some thing, I might be just telling them about how how to make your own videos and put them on YouTube. Now I would be calling that as education, perhaps that might not be an accepted definition of education for someone else. And therefore, I might call it CSR, but it might not be accepted as a CSR activity. Getting the point which I'm trying to make, right? So that is one thing. Then there is lack of knowledge and about the sector and industry best practices. Then apart from that, there are very few implementation agencies also. So you have a large number of NGOs in India. You have a large number of amount of money waiting to be spent as CSR, but companies do not know how to reach out to these NGOs and who is going to be the implementation agency. Because at times NGOs themselves are not implementation agency for a particular project or a particular cause. They have some implementation agencies. So you have lack of implementation agencies, you have lack of platforms where companies and the NGOs can come together and spend the money effectively on the CSR activities, right? So this is again one of the ways of preparing a topic like the CSR. So CSR in India was the the topic. I don't know where this particular news item has been picked up from. Most probably has to be some new report or some article which might have come out in the Hindu or the Indian Express. Huh? There was an article?
It stated that basically argued that CSR cannot be the way because it can never meet the depth and penetration that the government has.
Okay.
That's why
Okay, so I mean, there would I perhaps see that particular
Shirking responsibility.
government shrugging responsibility and putting it on the private companies. Okay, so that is one thing. Now let's move on to the next topic quickly. This one is very important from the point of view of prelims, not as much as from the mains. So the Index of Industrial Production, IIP, right? What are the kind of questions which could come out? So इसके अंदर एक small piece of information दिया. Again, it does not really matter. आपको नहीं पता होना चाहिए कि IIP कितना घटा कितना बढ़ा and all that until unless you are preparing for PO exam or for some state exam, then it's a different thing. But as far as UPSC is concerned, it does not really matter whether इस पर्टिकुलर सेक्टर में घटा इस पर्टिकुलर सेक्टर में बढ़ा, उतना नहीं पूछेगा यूपीएससी. यूपीएससी बहुत ही बेसिक चीज़ पूछेगा. सबसे पहले तो व्हाट इज आईआईपी, इंडेक्स ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्शन होता क्या है. इट इज़ टू जज और डिटरमिन हाउ वेल हैज़ योर इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्शन बीन और हाउ इट हैज़ फेयर्ड in comparison to a particular period of time. Okay, it's the same as GDP or it's the same as any other index which is there, whether it is the HDI or whether it is the corruption perceptibility index or whatever, right? Now IIP का इंडिया में बेस ईयर कौन सा है, क्या है? 2004-05. GDP का 11-12, right? Okay. So now again this is one of the place where UPSC could just put in this thing in 2004-05 के अंदर घुमा देंगे, confuse कर देंगे इधर उधर, right? Another area, so areas to cover are what is the definition of IIP, what is the composition of IIP, that means that how many industries or how many items are covered under the IIP, right? As of now कितने items covered हैं IIP में? 682, right? Again this does not really matter. Even if you would have told me 681, it would not have mattered for a very simple reason that UPSC is not going to bother about 681 or 682. What it is going to bother about is that what are the major sectors or what are the core industries which are there in the IIP, which one of them has the highest weightage, whether it is the electricity, whether it is your coal, whether it is your crude oil or your manufacturing or whatever it is. Okay, that is what UPSC is going to look for. It is not going to look for a number fact. It is, even if the fact it is going to look for would have some analysis or logic behind it, right? Now the other thing would be that what are the changes which have happened in the IIP over the recent years, whether it has been going down or whether it has been increasing. If you know that there has been a decline in the IIP, say for example, so if an essay topic comes or if a question comes on the Indian manufacturing sector is in a state of doom or Indian something ऐसा कुछ करके essay आ जाता है, so again you could just say that as our IIP has also been witnessing a decline, especially in the sectors of coal और electricity or whatever. आपको एक दो सेक्टर कहीं पे पता है, specific core industry पता है जिसमें IIP नीचे गया है, तो आप उसको अपने आंसर में लिख देंगे. It adds a lot of value. Again no need to remember figures कि कोल में इतना कम हो गया है या उतना बढ़ गया है and all that. That is not what is required, right? Similarly IIP में और क्या पूछ सकते हैं? So what are the core industries? What is the definition of core industries? So your current affairs article says that in terms of percentage, the weightage of all 8 core industries in IIP is around 38%. Now it does not really matter whether it is 38 or 42 or 50. What is actually important is that what do you mean by these core industries? What are these major core industries? So electricity, steel, refinery products, crude oil, that is coal, cement, natural gas and fertilizers, and then know a general relationship that which one is the one which has the maximum weightage as far as the core industries is concerned. So for example, electricity has the maximum weightage, and then coal is somewhere बहुत पीछे है, right? जनरल ऑर्डर याद कर लो, पूरा एक एक स्पेसिफिक चीज नहीं याद करने की जरूरत. जस्ट रिमेंबर द जनरल ऑर्डर, लाइक इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट वन, कोल बहुत पीछे है, राइट, और फर्टिलाइजर और नेचुरल गैस उससे भी और पीछे है, राइट, एंड देन यू हैव समथिंग लाइक क्रूड ऑयल समवेयर बिटवीन कोल एंड द इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. Try and remember a general order in your mind and that would be enough. These kind of topics are important for the point of view of prelims and not for mains. Mains के अंदर कुछ नहीं पूछा जा सकता until unless UPSC goes bonkers, which they will not, right? And yeah, and yes, and then what is the analysis, right? Analysis in terms of that if there is any news article which comes on it and which says that our IIP has been declining, or let's say GDP का base year change किया गया था थोड़े दिन पहले, and उसकी वजह से there was a lot of news and debate about it. Should the base year of GDP have been changed or not, and what has been the impact of changing the base year of GDP and the method of calculation of the GDP and this and that. So have there been any changes which have taken place in that when the IIP is calculated? If not, then need not be bothered about it. Otherwise, because ऐसे 10 आर्टिकल्स आएंगे इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स के अंदर जहाँ पे वो बताएंगे कि IIP घट गया है, बढ़ गया है, इस रीज़न से IIP क्रूड ऑयल में इसलिए IIP कम हो गया है. That's okay. I mean, do not be bothered about such minute details. Okay. Now, next topic. Okay. So possible questions would be that, you know, duration of the release. कब release होता है, किस period पे release होता है IIP? Every month, right? Every month, and the data is released after the 6 weeks of the concerned month. Okay. So that is there. Then which is the organization which is responsible for collecting the data under the IIP? CSO, right? CSO और NSSO के अंदर difference पता होना चाहिए. Just a couple of days back I was asking someone, or someone asked someone that, you know, who collects data for your poverty line estimation. Someone replied CSO. So you know, be clear CSO में क्या difference है, CSO और NSSO का क्या roles है, क्या difference है. Then on top of that, this data is collected by CSO, but it gets data from more than 17 ministries under the government of India. More than 17 ministries and departments under the government of India provide data to CSO, which is collated, and then the index of industrial production is released, right? So CSO in a way is the collecting agency or is the nodal agency which collects data from all the other ministries. Again, not really important in terms of information. Okay. Now, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Okay. Now, this is a very important topic in my opinion. इससे बहुत आसानी से सवाल बन सकता है मेंस के अंदर. वो इसलिए, और अगर सवाल नहीं भी बनेगा तो आप इसको इन्फॉर्मेशन को बहुत जगह यूज़ कर सकते हो. ये मल्टीपल जगह पे इन्फॉर्मेशन यूज़ की जा सकती है. वो इसलिए, how many of you are from Vidarbha here? Okay. Farmer suicides, right? Farmer suicides in Vidarbha have been on a high, especially in the last few months, right? Now, one of the major reasons for that is that the insurance mechanisms which are there for the farmers in the country are very poor, and therefore now because of that farmers run into debts and this and that, and their crops fail because of droughts and because of poor infrastructure and because of dependence on rain and this and that, and then they want to commit suicide. Obviously there are hundreds of other reasons also for that, but this is one of the major reasons. Now, you already had 2 existing schemes which were there. One was the National Agriculture Insurance Scheme, and then there was a MNAIS also. That was the modified natural agriculture insurance scheme. Plus on top of that, you had also weather based crop insurance scheme, right? WBCI ऐसा कुछ था जो भी था, weather based crop, हाँ WCIS था जो भी था, right? So weather based crop insurance scheme was also there in case of eventuality of some weather, this thing disrupting the crop or destroying the crop, then also there was some insurance. Now what has happened is that there were several lacunae with the previous insurance schemes. Obviously there were, one has to accept it. That's why farmers are committing suicide. That's why they are running into debts of thousands of rupees. Now, what were those lacunae? First of all, there was not a fixed rate of premium. I hope all of you understand what a premium is in case of an insurance. Yes? So, can someone explain it? What is premium in case of an insurance? If I take an insurance, yeah, tell.
The regular payment you have to make to keep the insurance alive.
Okay, so the regular payments or you have to make, or payments you have to make at some particular duration or intervals in order to keep your insurance, the promise of being insured for a particular calamity alive, right? Now, the rate of insurance was somewhere between 1.5 to 3.5, I think, if I'm not wrong, maybe it's written somewhere. It was okay. It was between 2.5 and 3.5 for the kharif crops, and it was 1.5 for the rabi crops, right? Plus on top of that, for commercial crops and for the horticulture crops, commercial crops, कौन सी हो गई commercial crops? Right, jute and cotton, sugarcane, and a lot of these cash crops. So all these commercial crops, the rate of premium or the premium was decided on the basis of the actuarial sciences, and that is basically on the basis of the risk involved, and therefore at times the premium went up till as high as 25 to 30% of the total amount insured, right? So imagine paying 25 to 30%. So आपका 10,000 रुपए का क्रॉप है और आप उसके ऊपर 2500 रुपए तो प्रीमियम ही पे कर रहे हो in order to protect and insure yourself against some natural calamity or the crop failing or whatever, right? Plus on top of that, there was a cap also which had been put earlier by the government at times. So what that would mean is that the total value of your crop was not insured. अगर आपकी total एक cap थी कि 10 लाख तक है तब तक cover होगा, 10 lakh के ऊपर गया, so we are not going to cover, right? So there were caps which had been put on the insurance cover by the government, and because of that, again, it was creating a lot of problem. Plus on top of that, there was local assessment techniques नहीं available थी, right? The use of technology was not there as far as the MNAIS or the NAIS were concerned. Plus there were a number of other lacunae also, because of which these two schemes failed massively, right? Now plus on top of that, the premiums, as I said, were really high. The penetration of these insurance schemes were very low. Most of the farmers were, first of all, not aware about insurance schemes. Even if they were, the kind of paperwork and the kind of proof which had to be required to be submitted was very cumbersome. Plus on top of that, the premium rates were very high and were fluctuating in nature, as I said, for the commercial crops, etc., which dissuaded the farmers from becoming a part of these insurance schemes. Okay. Now, what are the salient features of the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana? This had been released by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and okay, so it says that new scheme removes the previous capping on premium so that the farmers get full sum insured, right? One is that which I told you already. The other one is that farmers' contribution to premium has been reduced significantly. So now the government has also increased its contribution to the insurance premium significantly. It says that it has increased from 2,823 crores in 2015-16 to 7,750, almost 3 times in 2018-19. Then on top of that, there are going to be multiple localized risk and post-harvest losses taken into account to ensure that no farmer is alone in times of distress. So even local level के ऊपर अगर कोई particular loss होता है या एक particular distress create होता है, even that would be taken into account while the insurance the claim for the insurance is being decided. And then it says that use of simple and smart technology through phones and remote sensing for quick estimation and early settlement of claims. So as I said that at times earlier the settlement of claims for the insurance used to take almost a year, in fact run into years. Now they have made it simple. You could click a picture from a mobile and of the harvest or whatever in the cut crop and therefore send it, and the claim could be made easier, right? And even the use of GPS and GIS and all these, not GPS, sorry, the use of GIS has also been incorporated, and therefore technology has come in handy. Now where does this topic also fit in? There is a topic आपके syllabus में paper 3 में, use of e-technology in the aid of the farmers, right? So there was a question also this year, right? कहीं पे भी ऐसा कुछ क्वेश्चन आए, टेक्नोलॉजी के यूज़ के ऊपर क्वेश्चन आए, आप वहाँ पे बता सकते हो कि भाई अभी जो रिसेंटली लॉन्च्ड इसके अंदर है, यहाँ पर इस स्कीम के अंदर देयर इज अ यूज ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी इन मोबाइल फोन्स. हाउ कैन मोबाइल फोन्स ब्रिंग इन अ रेवोल्यूशन इन ऑल द फील्ड्स ऑफ ह्यूमन एंडेवर इन द नेक्स्ट सेंचुरी. इसके ऊपर टॉपिक आ जाता है. यू कुड राइट हंड्रेड्स ऑफ थिंग्स एंड दिस कुड बी जस्ट वन ऑफ दोज थिंग्स, बिकॉज एवरीवन विल राइट कि हाँ इससे टेली एजुकेशन होगा, टेली मेडिसिन होगा, बट यू हैव टू गिव एग्जाम्पल्स. एग्रीकल्चर में हेल्प होगा तो कैसे होगा? गिव एग्जाम्पल्स, वेदर इट इज the e-Chopal or whatever, but give examples, right? And yes, so again, what are the possible areas to cover in this? What are the provisions of the scheme, salient features? What are the improvement over the previous schemes? What are the problem areas? Now this is also something, as is the habit with the newspapers like Hindu, they will always come out with some sort of a criticism or this thing and that, and this and that would be always present about this thing, and it's good. It's always good to have a critique of a scheme or a provision or a policy of the government, and therefore you should be knowing what are the possible problem areas also of this scheme. So what are the possible problem areas? So the government is thinking that, you know, we are going to increase the penetration of the insurance schemes amongst the farmers now, because the premiums are going to be really less, right? And therefore we would be able to increase the penetration from the existing 23% to the 50%. But there is no data to substantiate this. It's just a mere wish on the part of the government. That is what is said by some people. Rather, there is no evidence or proof to substantiate that it is actually going to go up to 50%. One is that. Second is that some people also think that the problem with the insurance schemes is just because of the premium rates. आप premium rates कम कर दो तो ज़्यादा enrollment बढ़ जाएगा. It's been noticed in some of the states where MNAIS is running, that is the Modified National Agricultural Insurance Scheme is running. There, even in spite of lower premium rates, the penetration is not that great. Perhaps one of the reasons could be that farmers are still not very averse to or not very clear with the idea of insurance. Second, it might be that they are not aware of it at all, or perhaps it's because the kind of cumbersome procedures which are involved in order to get their claims and this and that and all those things has actually made it difficult for the farmers to get themselves enrolled, and penetration therefore remains to be very low. Plus on top of that, there is also one more interesting thing which is there in MNAIS. It is said that the subsidy burden for the sorry, not the MNAIS, but for the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana would be shared between the centers and the state in the ratio of 50:50. Now whether the states have come on board for this is anybody's guess, right? It might just happen that some of the states where the ruling government or the BJP government is there, they might just support it, some others will not, and then all this scheme, which is very well intended, might just get lost in politics, right? So that is also another problem area. Then on top of that, there are certain other criticisms also. Risks such as destruction by wild animals have still not been covered under this, right? Plus some people also say that why do you not make the entire crop insurance in this country comprehensive under just one umbrella of one scheme? Why are you still running with WBICS, right? So why is that also running? Weather base से होगा तो अलग होगा, इससे होगा तो अलग होगा. Why are you doing that? Why is that distinction there? Plus it also says that one key problem of crop loss or damage compensation, the unit of assessment remains unaddressed in the new scheme again. So the unit of assessment which is going to be there in order to assess what is the damage which has been created, again still remains to be undefined, and therefore again would lead to ambiguities as far as the implementation of this particular scheme is concerned, right? Now this is what is about the Fasal Bima Yojana. Plus उसके अलावा way forward है, solutions है. What could be the possible questions right? One of the possible question could be that on-farm insurance remains to be an unsolved problem in spite of several schemes in the past. Analyze. Yes, and how far can the PM Fasal Bima Yojana help in addressing the lacunae with the previous initiatives? How many of you wrote the mains this year? Okay, so there was a question with regards to Ganga. इस साल था पिछली साल था पिछली साल था इस साल था ना गंगा के रिगार्डिंग एक क्वेश्चन था कि बहुत सारे इनिशिएटिव है और ये सब है तो नमामि गंगे NMCG और ये सब और प्रीवियस कौन से इनिशिएटिव्स थे तो अभी जो रीसेंट इनिशिएटिव है उसमें ऐसा क्या डिफरेंट है जो प्रीवियस इनिशिएटिव में नहीं था. सो सिमिलर काइंड ऑफ अ क्वेश्चन कुड बी फ्रेम्ड इन दिस ऑल्सो, right? You could have other related questions also, that the recently launched Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana promises to be a harbinger of change for the farmers in the country. Analyze or explain or elaborate, that could be there. So there you would be writing the salient features, plus at the same time you would be saying that there are certain lacuna which have still not been addressed in the scheme and they also need to be addressed. That is there. The question could be like this also, where you would have to talk about previous initiatives, then you will have to talk about the problems in the previous initiatives, and then you will talk about that how this new initiative is an improvement over the existing initiative. And since the question is how far, it does not really mean that आपको बैठ के यहाँ पे गुणगान करने हैं स्कीम के. That means that you have to also critically look at the scheme and say that yes, even though the scheme is a well-intended step towards improving the insurance regime in the country for the farmers, but there are still a number of problem areas which remain to be with the scheme. ठीक है?
So the biggest lack
Yes.
is that assessment making. That what would the productivity of the crop?
Exactly. So assessment making still remains to be an issue, but I think because now they are going to get in GIS and information tools into it, it would improve. But again, that is actually a problem which is there with the insurance schemes in the country. Right now, moving on to the topic of Startup India. Okay, there was an event which was conducted with a lot of flair and this thing in Delhi at Vigyan Bhavan. So now talking about Startup India, what are the various dimensions which or the areas to cover in this? What are the features of the Startup India policy which has been released by the Prime Minister? There are 19 important points which are there. I am not going to make you note all those 19 points. Go and find for yourself on the internet. But otherwise there are some important some really important ones which are there, is that there are going to be tax benefits which are going to be provided. There is going to be hand holding of the enterprises or the startups which is going to happen. Plus on top of that, the intellectual patenting of products and intellectual patenting of ideas, etc. is going to be made much easier for the startups, right? Plus it also says that they have also been exempted for a certain period of time from labor laws, and they have also been exempted from the 3 environmental laws for a period of 3 years from the time they are incepted, right? Plus on top of that, there is a fund which has been created, a 10,000 crore rupees fund which has been created for the startups in the country. How is it going to be utilized? That's not been mentioned. Plus there is patent applications which will be filed by the startups will be getting fast tracked at lower courts. Then it says that government is going to set up a Startup India hub. There are going to be more incubation centers which are going to come up at universities and colleges in the country. Can someone explain what is an incubation center?
Yeah, B-plans are presented and the ideas are...
Okay, the ideas are incubated. That's the first step when a startup comes up, and they want to promote it at the university level only, where innovation in products and innovation in services sector or whatever could start taking place right at the university level, where young students and young research research people start coming into this particular thing and start incepting their idea right from there, right? So these are some of the features which are there in the Startup India plan. There are some of the criticisms also. One of the criticisms is that government does not very clearly define what do you mean by a startup, right? One is that. The second problem is that okay, so and then there is contention over it. Some people are saying nahi bahut clear hai. Some people are saying it's not very clear. Another problem with the Startup India policy is that there is no doubt that you should have supported the government. You should have supported the startups by providing them incentives, etc. But some people are questioning that why did you need to create a 10,000 crore rupees fund? Then why, if you only are going to fund the startups, then what is going to happen to the venture capitalists and to the angel investors and the investors, right? Why are they then going to invest? Because you are saying that we are going to invest 10,000 crores into the startups in the country. So that is one thing. Then on top of that, there are several other criticisms in terms of that you need to improve the basic infrastructure, and number of other laws and tax incentives also need to be, or tax laws and your compliances and all these things also need to be improved before you actually try and make India a startup hub of the world, right? So a related question to this could be that how far can Startup India program help India become the startup and the innovation hub of the world, right? So again, since it's a how far question, or it could be write a critical note on the Startup India program. ऐसा क्वेश्चन पूछती नहीं है यूपीएससी, बट खैर, सो वन कुड बी दिस, अनदर कुड बी से स्टार्टअप, व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय स्टार्टअप? सबसे पहले तो ये जान लो, मतलब स्टार्टअप करते रहते हैं सब. फर्स्ट यूपीएससी कैन एक्चुअली आस्क दैट, दे डू दैट, they go into the very basic definition and they will ask you what do you mean by a startup. Okay, so what do you mean by the startup, or what are the possible intended benefits of the Startup India program, what are the anticipated challenges, and what are the anticipated road bottlenecks which are going to be faced in the implementation of this program, or making India a startup hub of the world, or whatever, right? Now what is the importance of a startup? Why are startups so important? Why is Prime Minister giving so much importance to startups? Innovation. What else? Job creation, employment. There have been more than 80,000 jobs which have been created in the country in last few years in the startups. What else? Manufacturing sector. And okay, so this is one of the anomalies of India's startup culture, that we hardly have any startups in the product space. All of them, most of them are in the services sector. Whether you, कोई भी उठा के देख लो आप, right? Whether it is Ola Cabs or Oyo Rooms or this or that or whatever, most of the startups are actually in the services sector, and product based startup जो है वो बहुत कम है. What else? What else? Why is Startup India, or this particular thing has been launched?
Social problems like poverty.
Okay, so solving certain social problems through entrepreneurship, right? Social entrepreneurship भी जिसको कहते हैं, और plus even getting grassroots innovations which could impact the grassroots, something which the erstwhile Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh also used to talk about frequently. Yes, what else? Removing the hassles and encouraging the foreign investment into the country, and also encouraging more and more people to take up entrepreneurship as a career, and to again generate more employment, tackle the problem of unemployment, to be able to utilize the local resources and domestic resources of the country more effectively in order to increase the productivity of the economy, and all those things. So these are the possible benefits and impacts. Plus, what are going to be the possible benefits and impacts specifically of the Startup India program? That also you could say. Plus, so the event which happened in Delhi was called by the name of Startup India and Stand Up India. So what does the Stand Up India part cater to? Okay, so the SC, ST and the women entrepreneurs are specifically going to be given a lot of help, whether it is in form of the credit loan guarantee scheme. Okay, credit loan guarantee scheme क्या होता है, that जो भी credit दिया जा रहा है बैंक से, उसकी guarantee government लेगी, right? So if it's going to fail, government is going to give guarantee for this. This is the reason for this is because banks in general, or any credit agencies in general, or any loan agencies in general would be very reluctant to provide credit to the startups, especially to, and this is especially true of startups which are owned by women entrepreneurs or by the entrepreneurs from the SC, ST or the backward communities, right? And therefore, in order to encourage more of startups from such community to come up in the country, it's important that credit is provided to them on an easy basis, and the guarantee for that is provided by the government. So that is one thing. Plus on top of that, there is something called as hand-holding exercise, or hand-holding of these startups. They are going to be given certain expertise through providing them mentors, or providing them training in operations before they launch their startup, and once they have launched their startup and once the business is into being, then providing them timely help in terms of management expertise or technical expertise and this and that and so many other things, right? And then yeah, and then you have the Startup India, the Stand Up India scheme. They are going to be intended 2.5 lakh beneficiaries and borrowers which are going to be there, and all that thing. Don't need to remember the facts, but just remember that what are the major provisions which are there in Startup India, Stand Up India, what are going to be the impacts, what are the possible challenges which are there, and then how is it and how and what is a startup and why are startups so important for the Indian economy, right? So this is about the Startup India and the Stand Up India thing. Now there is something called as the fourth industrial revolution. What is fourth industrial revolution? सब पहला इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन कब आया था, किस चीज़ से आया था? स्टीम से आया था, स्टीम एंड वाटर रन मशीन्स. उसके बाद द इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, right? So there was assembly line production and all those things. Then what happened? The third industrial revolution happened with the advent of the digital age or the information technology, and then finally now we are entering into the phase of the fourth industrial revolution, where we are actually going to build up on the basis of the digital and the information technology that we have got in the past, right? And we are going to talk about things like the big data and the 3D printing and the Internet of Things and Internet of Services and this and that, and so many other concepts have now started to come up, right? And we are going to have artificial intelligence and this and that, and all of that is going to basically be a part of your fourth industrial revolution. Now there was a summit. So now why is this particular thing important? मैं एक चीज़ बताता हूँ, ये इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन वाला जो टॉपिक है एज सच इम्पॉर्टेंट नहीं है अभी, बिकॉज ये एक बहुत ही वेग आइडिया है and it's a very conceptual kind of a thing, so no one clearly knows what do you mean by fourth industrial revolution, what are going to be its impact and all those things. So do not be bothered about that. It's important from the point of view of prelims, right? Prelims के अंदर इसलिए important है because World Economic Forum, अब क्वेश्चन प्रीलिम्स में पूछा जा सकता है दैट वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम के बारे में कुछ दे देंगे और फिर बोलेंगे वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम इज एन सो वो 4 स्टेटमेंट देंगे, और वो ऐसी नहीं देंगे कि वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम इज एन इंटर गवर्नमेंटल बॉडी, ए वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम इज अ नॉन फॉर प्रॉफिट बॉडी, बी, और वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम इज एन एजेंसी ऑफ द यूनाइटेड नेशंस. ऐसा नहीं देंगे. वो एक एस्पेक्ट पे क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछती है यूपीएससी. वो क्या करेंगे, आपको 3-4 मल्टीपल डायमेंशंस देंगे और उसके अंदर से एक स्टेटमेंट गलत होगी या एक स्टेटमेंट सही होगी, क्या ऐसा होगा. सो व्हाट दे वुड डू इज दैट दे विल राइट वर्ल्ड, विच ऑफ दीज फॉलोइंग ट्रू इज ट्रू अबाउट द वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम. इट रिलीजेज द ग्लोबल कॉम्पिटिटिव इंडेक्स and it was a body which was formed in the 1950s along with the World Bank. Then third, it is a non-profit body. So इसके अंदर तीसरी स्टेटमेंट आपकी सही होगी, so you'll have to take that. So again इस तरीके के क्वेश्चन से जब भी कोई ऐसी कोई बॉडी से रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन आए, किसी का इंडेक्स निकला हो, WHO ने निकाला है, कुछ है, उसी समय उसको वहाँ पे उसके बारे में विकीपीडिया या गूगल के ऊपर पढ़िए and then try and get the information about when was that body established, what was the purpose or the objective with which that body was established, what is the nature of that body, whether it is a private entity, whether it is a non-governmental agency, whether it is an intergovernmental agency. इस तरीके की चीज़ें यूपीएससी प्रीलिम्स के अंदर पूछती है. कुछ जो सबसे फेमस बॉडीज होंगी वो न्यूज़ के अंदर रही होंगी, उनका कुछ निकला होगा तो वो उसके रिलेटेड पूछेंगे. वो बोलेंगे अर्थ आर किसने ऑर्गेनाइज कराया था. सो देयरफॉर ऐसा अर्थ आ रहा है तो जस्ट सी कि यार ये अर्थ आर कौन कराता है, ये वाली रिपोर्ट कौन रिलीज करता है, वर्ल्ड द ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस रिपोर्ट कौन रिलीज करता है, वर्ल्ड बैंक करता है, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम, ग्लोबल इकोनॉमिक फोरम जो वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम करता है या IMF करता है, कौन करता है. सो प्रीलिम्स, these kind of tits and bits of information can help you get 5 or 6 extra marks, right? And then yes, what could be the, so fourth industrial revolution का जहाँ तक है, there are certain risks and there are certain potential benefits which are associated with the fourth industrial revolution. What are the risks? Job losses might happen because more and more replacement with technology would happen. But again, there is a counter argument to it. You could say that people used to fare the same during the first industrial revolution. the second, during the third. But if you look at it, nothing can replace manpower at the end of the day. So even though during the entire history of the mankind there has been a tussle between the machine and the man, but at the end of the day there is enough space for both machine and man to survive and coexist in the society. What else? Security implications, right? Surveillance by the state might just increase because of the fourth industrial revolution. There would be more and more intrusion into the private space of the citizens. For example, in case of Google, the Android phone, you do not know that your SMSs are being tracked, your calls are being tracked, your contacts are being tracked, your Facebook chats are being tracked, whatever, everything you are doing is being tracked by Google, or Facebook is tracking almost each and every information about you. So that is there. What else? Okay, so the world could be divided between the technological haves and the have-nots, especially the poor and the developing countries might just face the problems, especially even though it is said that technology is neutral to the size and the volume and the origin, but at the same time some countries still hold the upper hand as far as technology is concerned, and they also hold a very strong hand as far as controlling the global governance structures for information technology is concerned. For example, recently you've been reading that there has been a lot of debate over who should control the internet, right? Yes, so who's going to control, whether it is going to be a body which is based out of USA, or should it be an independent body just like the United Nations? Who is going to control something like the internet? So that is there. What else could be a risk of the fourth industrial revolution? Disruptions might happen, right? Disruption because जो existing industries हैं आपकी, they might just get disrupted because of new technology coming in. Say something like traditional handicrafts have been almost now washed away because of a large number of other goods coming into the market, right? So that is, existing industries might suffer, small industries, small cottage industries might just suffer, right? And this would also be challenging for the companies to adapt, because now companies would also have to adapt very quickly to the changing information technology changes, right? Every day there will be a new innovation which would happen, and therefore companies would also have to adapt quickly. What could be the possible benefits? One is that there could be a lot of transparency and accountability in the functioning of the governance and the government, right? Second is that the efficiency and the productivity of a lot of activities that we are involved in might just go up because of the digital revolution. The bridges, which someone said that there are going to be haves and the have-nots, actually the bridges might be that the technology could act as an enabler to bridge the haves and the have-nots, because technology, as I said, is considered to be neutral to size and to the amount of money and this and that. So the smaller organizations or the smaller companies and the outfits would also be able to compete with the bigger conglomerates, right? So these are some of the things about your fourth industrial revolution. Now quickly moving on to the next topic. Okay, ये वाला तो हो गया. इसके बाद है आपका IMF के ऊपर एक I'll just quickly run through that, and that is going to be the last topic which I am taking here. So now this one is that the reforms which were passed by the IMF have finally now been approved. This is because of that the big daddy USA has finally approved and ratified the changes, right? Now what could be the possible questions out of this? First of all, सबके ध्यान वहाँ चला गया, मैं करता हूँ इसको कर देता हूँ, थैंक यू लगा देता हूँ, ठीक है. Okay, so now IMF reforms. So what is India's current share or quota in the IMF? 2 point. Okay, so those who are preparing for the interview, be precise and specific with your information. Do not say कि 2% का 4% मत कर देना. It does not really matter whether it's 2.3 or 6, but right, just be clear that it's somewhere in the range of 2. One is that. Second is, what do you mean by quota at IMF? This could be one of the questions which you should prepare as far as prelims is concerned. IMF के बारे में ही क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है, right? For example, if I give you a question, which of the following is amongst the objectives of the IMF? First one is development of infrastructure in developing countries? Yes. Yes. डेवलपमेंट चलो ठीक है अभी देखते हैं आ जाओ चलो डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन डेवलपिंग कंट्री सम पीपल आर सेइंग यस yes or no no okay then the second objective is option B is promotion of exchange rate stability yes promotion of macroeconomic growth within the countries okay bridging the inequality between the developing and the developed countries could be yes or no bridging the development of economic development or the inequality between the developed and the developing countries no strengthening the governance systems in the country that does not have anything to do with strengthening governance systems. So basically, all the options which I said, except the macroeconomic growth and the promotion of exchange rate stability, were wrong. So now this is how UPSC traps you and tracks you. They will give you something which will seem right. Okay, it will seem मतलब वो ठीक लगेगा, वो गलत नहीं होगा, as such. पर वो factually गलत ही होता है, right? So you have to be very careful. I mean, you know, they give such example, the questions in history also. जहाँ पे भी matter of interpretation आ जाता है ना, वहाँ पे बहुत specific रहना पड़ता है. I remember in 2012 in the prelims there was a beautiful question on PISA Act, okay? And PISA के ऊपर उन्होंने पूछा था कि उसके अंदर माइनर मिनरल्स आते हैं मेजर मिनरल्स. सो उन्होंने मेजर मिनरल्स लिख दिया था वहाँ पे यूपीएससी ने एंड दैट वाज द ओनली ट्रैप इन दैट क्वेश्चन एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल एक्चुअली एंडेड अप मार्किंग दैट क्वेश्चन रॉन्ग बिकॉज लोगों ने बोला हाँ इसके अंदर तो मेजर मिनरल्स की वो एडजुडिकेशन दी जाती है ग्राम सभा को एंड ठीक है. सो पीपल डिड नॉट एक्चुअली टेक नोट ऑफ दैट इट वाज सपोज टू बी फॉर माइनर एंड नॉट मेजर. यूपीएससी कभी ऐसा नहीं करेगी कि आई हैव सीन यू नो विद due respect to all the coaching institute, I have seen some coaching institute do that in their test series. They'll say कि ये एक अग्नि 4 मिसाइल है, इसकी रेंज अग्नि 4 नहीं वो रॉकेट है कोई, तो वो बोलेंगे इसकी रेंज कितनी है 2350 ऐसे ऑप्शन दे देंगे, उसकी रेंज होगी 2450 एंड दे विल से कि वो 2350 नहीं था गलत है, राइट? यूपीएससी विल नेवर डू दैट. यूपीएससी विल नॉट ट्राई एंड मेक अ फूल आउट ऑफ यू ऑन नंबर्स. ओके, they will never do that. They will always try and trap you in the concept. So be very clear about that. Plus on top of that IMF से related और क्या question निकल सकते हैं? Why is quota so important? What is the importance of quota, right? Why are countries striving for more and more quota? What is it? Voting rights. What else? Lending decisions to the other countries. What else? Also, right now the appointments just before these reforms to the IMF, there were appointed directors also. There were certain elected directors and appointed directors, and these appointed directors were actually appointed with the members having the largest quota in the IMF, the 5 largest members, right? Now that is also one reason why countries wanted quota, right? So these are, and plus as an economic power also, it showcases you as a global economic power if you have more quota with you, right? So that is one thing. And plus then why should there be reforms in the IMF? Why should there be reforms in the World Bank? What should be these reforms? You should prepare them properly, right? इससे related ये भी आ जाता है that if you actually read between the lines of this particular thing, India's voting rights have been increased from 2.6 to 2.3 to 2.6 and China's to 6% from 3.8. Apart from that, even Russia and Brazil, their voting rights and their quota has also been increased. What that you could read between the lines is that the BRICS in a way has got more representation at the IMF now, and in a way you could write this point अगर क्वेश्चन ब्रिक्स से रिलेटेड आता है तो, ठीक है. If the question is that BRICS has been a complete failure or BRICS is heading towards failure, if you have to write one of the points for the BRICS and how BRICS is actually becoming crucial for global economy and this and that and whatever, this could be one of the points. What I'm just again giving you a perspective on is all the knowledge that you have got can be utilized in the paper, but you would have to start using your brain in such a way that you actually start using unrelated information in some other topic, and that is what is going to create the difference between a topper, or that creates a difference between a topper and someone who scores a low rank or does not get selected or whatever, right? So this is about it for today. There are some other topics also which I have skipped. There is on Ishwar panel and some other topics, but I felt that they were not as important from the perspective of mains. You could read them up yourself, right? Sure. Thank you.